Hey, how you getting on? Today on the extremely obsessive Guitar Gear Rabbit Hole show, I compare the Fane F70 with its Fryette amplification OEM counterpart, the Fane F70G. Alright, this video has a bit of a backstory. If you don't care about any of that crap and just want to hear the sounds, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below. Yes, how did this start? I've had the F70 on the channel a few times. One was comparing it with the P50E, the other Fryette amplification OEM speaker, and I had always assumed that the F70G was exactly the same as the F70, just with a different label. However, in talking to my buddy Kagan at Creative Devices, he said he believed they were different. And since I had built up a nice working relationship with the guys from Fane, I just asked them. And they confirmed the F70G is a bit different. Stephen Fryette had tweaked it a bit. Of course, respecting their customers' privacy, they couldn't tell me exactly how. But it was enough for me to reach out to Fryette Amplification to see if they'd make an exception and sell me one so I could make a comparison. Because you can't buy the F70G as is, you can only get it in cabs, and I didn't have the money nor the space for another cab. So I reached out to Fryette through their contact form and got an initial reply, and they were willing to sell me one. After a bit of back and forth though, the communication kind of dropped, and I figured, well, I shot my shot. It was worth a try, it didn't work out. But a few weeks later, I got in contact with Jürgen from Cotton Musical Supply, Fryette Amplification's distributor for Germany, through another convoluted backstory, and he was looking for me because Fryette had asked him to supply me with an F70G. And they did, and you will have noticed that this doesn't say Fryette. The F70G for Fryette has a green label. This is labeled Sound City Power Speaker with high efficiency anisotropic ferrite magnet. Sound City belongs to Fryette Amplification, I believe. This is a Fane F70G, and I had my guys at Fane confirm that this is in fact the same speaker. So even though this doesn't say Fryette, this definitely is an F70G. It even says here on the label. Yeah. So now I finally had the F70G. The problem is that is a 16 ohm speaker, and I personally prefer 8 ohm speakers, and I had since sold my 16 ohm F70. But lucky for me, in 2024, I had befriended Todd, my tube amp doctor, and asked him if I could borrow an F70 from them. And they said yes. So I'm not sure if that makes this video a sponsored video or an ultra sponsored video, but either way, thank you very much to Tom, a tube amp doctor. Thank you very much to Stephen Fryette and Fryette Amplification. Thank you very much to Jürgen at Cotton Musical Supply. And last but not least, thank you very much to my friends at Fane Acoustics. So with that out of the way, what am I going to do? I'm going to put the F70 on this side of this Marshall 1960 AV cab and the F70G on that side. I'm going to mic them both up with Shure SM57s in the same position. I believe they'll probably have the same sweet spot. If not, I might make some mic adjustments. I need to make IRs for these first and see which ones sound best to my ears. And you'll be getting IRs for all the mic positions I'm trying in this video. And my Patreons get a big IR pack as usual. And once the speakers are in and I have the mic positions determined, I'm going to play some sloppy riffs through one of my amplifiers or several of my amplifiers as usual. Yeah. And let you know my thoughts at the end. So I'm going to put the speakers in, make the IRs, and meet you back for the aforementioned sloppy riffs. See you in a sec. Alright, it's a couple of days later and I can't remember anything I shot in the intro because I had to make the IRs for these speakers beforehand, and apparently I have the memory of a goldfish. First point is you'll be getting an IR for each speaker to download and do your own testing at home. Both speakers are mic'd up in the exact same position with Shure SM57, slightly further outside from my usual vintage 30 sweet spot. Yeah, this is the F70, that's the F70G. Yeah, I think that's about it. Let's go. I want to make use of my KHE amp switcher up there and switch to a different amplifier. And I have a Randall RM100 behind me here, which I channel modded so that I can access both Synergy module channels. And I have a Fryette Pitbull module in there. And seeing as how this is a Fryette OEM speaker, it only seems appropriate to use some Fryette gear. And that's the only Fryette gear I own, sadly. So. So I could already tell when I was making the IRs, because that's the process I use. Before I record anything, I make the IR packs, and then I toggle between that and my reference Vintage 30 IR that I made myself to find the sweet spots. And I was doing the same for these speakers, and I could already tell there's a huge difference. And I'm sure you could hear that as well on your end and see it in the graphs. Much to my surprise, the F70G doesn't just seem to be a relabel. I think it is its own speaker. It's definitely different. I think the differences we see in these two speakers are much too large to be attributed to production tolerances. And in my Big Vintage 30 video, where I tested over 50 Vintage 30s from over 30 years of production, I think we got a feel for how large this tolerance band can be. And I think what we saw and heard here goes way beyond that. So the differences can't be attributed to production tolerances. The F70G definitely is a different speaker, which surprises me a bit because I would have thought that maybe there was a minor difference, just maybe a different label or something, but this difference is huge. And yeah, I like the F70G. And that concludes my assessment. Feel free to check out the IRs I made. I have one IR for each speaker for you to download and do your testing at home. And if you want to become a patron of mine and support me, I have an IR pack of both speakers online there. You can't buy the F70G. You can only buy the regular F70. Well, that's not entirely true. You can buy F70Gs, but you have to buy a Fryette cabinet around it. I haven't tried one yet, but I'm sure it sounds fantastic and is built well. The regular F70 is available without a cabinet around it from Tube Amp Doctor. Feel free to use my affiliate link down below if you want to get them for yourself and want to support me while doing so. I think the F70 is a fantastic speaker and Fane are fantastic people. And I think that's almost all I have to say. All that's left to say is thank you so much for watching. I've got loads more speaker and amp videos coming up, so I'd love for you to check those out too. Yeah, thanks again for watching and bye.